Hi. Again, just want to iterate what Tom has already said. Welcome to the third session summer school from the NUA. Today we will be looking into architecture. And I graduate from the Norwich University of the Arts. I would like to welcome you guys. So here we go. So I just want to introduce myself and how I got into art. So I am based in the UK, and as part of the secondary education, to be able to study for university, you need to have A levels, or which is equivalent to a college qualification. So in A levels, I studied art, maths, and physics, and 1 year of photography. So A levels is usually 2 years. And during my time, or during my preparation for architecture, because I think I'm one of the lucky ones to know that before I got into uni, I knew that I wanted to do architecture, which made it quite easier for me to figure out what I needed to do and how my portfolio was going to look for my my interview for the university. So I was always intrigued about old architecture and Gothic architecture. So whenever I try to capture the buildings, or let's say the essence of the buildings, I try to make it look 3D on paper to give that kind of depth and more more feel and atmosphere into the images. So after my secondary education, I then applied to the Norwich University of the Arts, and I just want to introduce how the architecture path works in the UK. So NUA runs both Part 1 and Part 2 architecture courses, which is accredited by the Architects Registration Board in the UK. So Part 1 is your 3-year course, which is equivalent to a bachelor's degree. And then you have your year 1 out in practice to have a feel and to figure out whether you really want to do architecture or you really want to be an architect. So it gives you that insight of how the industry works. And then you go back into master's degree. So you do a 2-year course of master's in architecture, and then you have to do another year out in practice. So in total, it's a minimum of, So in total, it's a minimum of 7 years, but some people would take longer if they enjoyed doing the year out more. So you could do 1 to 2 to 3 years of year out, as long as you do the full RIBA, which stands for the Royal Institute of British Architects, which is a governing body that looks after the registration board for architects in the UK. So to sum it up, there's 3 parts within the whole journey. So while I was in NUA, we did a project called Forgery. So this is looking into other people's work and trying to emulate what they do. And again, that's also trying to find your own style of representation. So while I was studying my 3rd year of architecture degree at NUA, the project was based in Belfast. So we were looking into architecture and visible division within the cities. So one of the projects that I looked into was how do we create a center that's for that would benefit the social aspects of the city. And one of the problems within the city was the budgeting discrepancy. So they were shutting down mental health institute while trying to put more money towards preventing or treating obesity. So the whole project was based on prevention is better than cure. So the NHS, actually the National Health System, already has these programs set, but as part of my building program, I turned it into actual. This build lets you do all kind of programs that prevents you from that prevents people from going obese, or helps them stay healthy. So one of the things that was this might not be the case now within NUA, because every year or once every 2 years they do change the brief for the projects. I believe this year the site location was in Great Yarmouth, which is just a few miles away from Norwich. So one of the loved in NUA varieties that we do get, we do have a dedicated building for wood workshop, which allowed me to turn MDF boards into models such as this. And also within the architecture building, we do have a laser printing facility. So I turned my digital model into a physical model using this machine. So yeah. And then after graduating from Norwich University of the Arts, I had the opportunity to work in practice. And most of the things that we did was modeled in 3D SketchUp. So 3D SketchUp is actually a really great tool for architecture, because one, it's for beginners, but you can also take it to the next level and turn it into professional. You can practice it in professional level. Most of the things that we did was residential projects, and I really enjoyed it there. So I've now just finished my master's degree, and the theme that I was looking into was the COVID-19 pandemic. And this project is a memorial, a place for reflection for people that has been affected and those that wants to know more about what happened during the pandemic. So it's both for people of the local time and for people in the future. So if you're looking, there are plenty of ways to develop it. And one of the best things you could do is to explore architecture software for yourself. So first there's AutoCAD, which is a 2D program. It lets you draw plan sections. So these are the flat drawings that you do. And then there's Rise, kind of like SketchUp, but it works mostly on smooth surface rather than polygons. And V-Ray is a great tool for rendering. So if you want to turn your models into realistic designs or realistic presentations, you will be able to do that using V-Ray. And of course, there's Photoshop. So you can take a raw image of your model and turn it into something amazing just by adding layers on Photoshop. So today we will be looking at using 3D SketchUp, which is a great tool for beginners. So we are now moving on to the workshop. So I would like to invite everyone to get their things out. So first off, architectural inspirations can be found in looking at everyday objects. So for example, one of the famous buildings in the UK is the Gherkin, which is on 50 St. Mary's Axe in London. So people think that the inspiration came from the actual gherkin. That's why it's named the Gherkin. But actually, the idea came from a Venus flower basket sponge. And the architects looked into the structure of the Venus flower and then applied that to the building. But the name the Gherkin actually came after the design was finished. So we are now moving on to the workshop. So I'd like to ask everyone to pick 1 or 2 objects that interest them. So anything that's just around you, just have a look what you can use to inspire you. I would suggest something more rectangular or cube, just to make your life easier and just to make this workshop easier. So try and avoid curves if you want to, but it's not necessarily restrict. It's not necessarily that you pick something that's cuboid if you want to be more adventurous. So just sketch out 2 ideas, which is 2D and 3D. So we will be doing 2D sketch first and then turning it into 3D. So think about what building that could be. So it could be a house, a factory, a train station, school, a skyscraper, wherever your imagination takes you. Hopefully we'll end up with something like this. So from a book, you do a 2D drawing and imagine the faces, and then we'd be doing an isometric drawing at the end to see how the form feels. And then if you have more time, you could add the windows and the doors to the 3D drawing as well. So
Great, thanks, Precious. So at this stage, people are kind of getting their materials together. They've got their objects, they're getting their pencils and rulers or pens, and they're starting to do that 2D drawing of the object that they're then converting into some sort of architectural form. What I just wanted to ask you, Precious, as well, is your internet connection is a little bit iffy with your video. With the PowerPoint, it's fine, but what we'll do is we'll persevere for now. But if it drops out, if it becomes a little bit too clunky, then we might ask you to re-enter the session with your camera, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's good. Is it working okay now?
It's working okay at the moment. It's just every now and then it's a bit glitchy, is all.
Yeah, I did notice. I actually noticed myself freezing for a bit.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's something we'll just keep an eye on it. But other than that, so in terms of any questions that are coming in, if you do have any questions for Precious around her practice, around what we're doing now, around tips, around drawing, then please do send those into the chat and we will look to pop some of those over to Precious. We were trying out seeing Precious's drawing board, but actually we were having a little bit of issues with unblurring her background to be able to see that. So Precious is going to do some drawing and then we're going to send that we'll share that over our Padlet board a little bit later.
Yeah. So if you're doing this 2D, I would start with drawing a line at the bottom first. So just to give your 2D drawings a ground. I think you could briefly see it on the screen there. I would start with that and then do your two elevations or your two faces. So that's one side and then that's another side. So I'll be doing something similar because I still have the same objects.
So, hey, just while this is going on, just to answer a few of your questions in the chat. If you wouldn't like to join on at the moment, but you'd maybe like to do this a little bit later, that's absolutely fine if you'd like to do it after this workshop. And other than that, you don't need to draw these in SketchUp just yet. We're going to be moving on to SketchUp in the next part of the session. For now, we're just drawing with pens and paper. So Precious, can you tell me about how, obviously you came to study at Norwich University of the Arts, but how did you choose what university to go to when you were looking at going to uni?
I looked at the program of the university. So first you looked into how the course was run or what sort of things that you will be looking into. One of the things that really attracted me to come to the Norwich University of the Arts was that the first year we had the opportunity to travel to Berlin, like a course trip to Berlin. Not many universities do that, but NUA did. So that's one thing that made me choose. And the city was also amazing. I just felt like really inspired with Norwich itself because it's an old city, but it has a lot of great new and old architecture as well. So it's quite diverse in terms of inspirations.
Yeah. That's cool. That's really interesting you say that. We did a bit of research into this earlier this year, and it was absolutely those two things that made the biggest difference for the majority of students. It was the course content, what you get up to on the course, where you go, the skills you'll be developing, how it prepares you for the next step in your career. But it was also the environment that you're going to, that town or city, that makes a big difference. And those two things came far ahead of any other factors that students were looking at when they came to choosing a university. So that's really useful to know. Are you able to talk and draw? Is that cool? Are you good to do that?
Yeah.
Great. So just to repeat then, with this drawing, you're doing one that's just like the flat planes at the moment. So like the image on the slide that we can see at the moment in the middle. So you're starting off from the ground and then drawing upwards, is that right?
Yes. Hello?
Yeah, I'm still here, yeah.
Sorry, my screen froze, so I thought I lost you. Yeah, so I'm just drawing from the bottom up. It's just your drawings from the ground up usually helps for me.
And is there anything, because obviously like this is doing these types of technical drawing, they're a little bit different to like, you know, freehand, still life kind of drawing. What's like the main difference when you're drawing like a designer, drawing like an architect, opposed to kind of drawing like an art student, would you say?
I think, again, it's the straight lines that you need to do within for architecture. It's also making sure that all the lines are equal. So if I was an art student, I could just draw freehand and I wouldn't bother with the length of each line. But in architecture, you have to think, how are people going to fit in there, or how's this going to get built? So it has to be a certain number, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Cool. So when you were younger as well, you said at the beginning of the presentation, you were really fortunate in that you knew what it was that you kind of wanted to do. But how did you know that it was architecture. I think you said to me previously that you're interested in design, you're interested in maths, but how did you identify architecture as you know, a viable path for you, as something that you thought might be really interesting?
Because wanted to get into the creative industry, but then I wanted something that would materialize in a way. So it's just everything that I liked, I guess. So I liked math and I liked drawing, so I put them two together. And then the careers advisor at my old secondary school advised me to take up architecture, and then which was in line with my interests anyway. So I guess that's how I ended up doing architecture.
Yeah. That's cool. I think it's often useful to talk to careers advisors, to talk to teachers, to get a sense of their experience and their insight into what your skills could lead to. It's usually, I think, a culmination of factors that help you get an indication of what you're passionate about. It's usually, I guess, either what you spend your time on most, what you enjoy doing most, where your imagination goes to, what you spend your money on is a good indication of what you're really passionate about, and it could be a really good leading thing for what you study at the next level.
Yeah.
Cool. So there's two types of architecture course. There's a BA, a Bachelor of the Arts, and a Bachelor of Science, a BSc. So how did you decide that it was definitely the design route that you wanted to go down rather than the BSc route, the Bachelor of Science route?
The BA was more creative driven, so it's more on research, and it allowed you to imagine more things. Whereas the technology, I don't want to say it just felt like it was more rigid, the path to, the exploration on doing a bachelor in science in architecture was more, it just felt more constricting.
Yeah, restricting. Yeah.
Restricting. Yes.
No, that's good. That's really interesting that you'd say that. So, hey, I just want to ask everyone as well, if you do have any questions in the chat that you'd like to ask of Precious, then please do pop them in there and I'll ask them on your behalf. It's really interesting to see that some of you are using things like Rubik's Cubes. That's quite a good move, actually, to start off with. It'd be really interesting to hear what you've been using as your inspiration points. Like maybe you're using a tissue box, maybe you're using a mug, maybe you're using, I don't know, like a fan. Like when me and Sam were doing the run through, Sam used the fan. It was amazing. But it would be really interesting to know what you've been making with, or what you've been designing off, I should say. Okay, so I wanted to ask as well, Precious, in terms of, you mentioned about how you chose a course, but what are like key things that you would, since going to university, what are kind of the key things that you might recommend to someone choosing to study on an architecture course, in terms of how to prepare or what to look out for? Is there anything that kind of jumps to mind?
I think start with knowing the softwares that you're going to be using, and start drawing as well, because a lot of, I think the first year, well, during my first year, we had a lot of drawings. So just getting used to this practice, so this sketching practice, before we turn it into a digital model.
Yeah, cool. Yeah. Hey, it's really interesting to hear what people have been using. So we've got a lamp, a stapler, a stack of sketchbooks, and a box of candy, a box of hair dye. Cool. Brilliant. Someone's using an old cardboard box that they made. Excellent. A hairdryer. Wow, that's going to be really interesting to see the designs that come off that. So there's a question here as well. You might know the answer to this one. is maths compulsory to take at A level for going into architecture? If you don't know the answer to that, I can answer it.
I actually don't know if it's
That's all
compulsory.
right. You don't work at a university, so that's okay. So it depends on the place you're wanting to study. Some universities might stipulate that they ask for a maths A level. At Norwich University of the Arts, we don't stipulate that. That's because we have a design orientated subject. It's a BA, a Bachelor of the Arts, rather than a BSc. So we're more concerned about your design sensibilities and abilities, rather than your ability with maths and physics. Although it is beneficial, it's not essential for a course like ours. Brilliant. We've got people using a camcorder. Brilliant. A model toy Lamborghini. Excellent. Okay, is it okay having inspiration by 4 different objects together? Yeah, absolutely. You can see in Precious's photo on the presentation that she's used 3, well, an Amazon parcel and 2 books, for example.
Yeah.
Wow. Someone's using a smooth rock. Now that's going to be quite interesting to see how they develop that. Great.
I think I saw someone said a golf ball.
Wow. That would be really interesting to see how that develops. Okay, here's an interesting one. Is architecture as hard as everyone says? All the videos I see about studying architecture say that you have to pull many or pull
Hours.
Sorry, nightmares. Okay, so is it really hard? Does it take up all your time? Is it really stressful, effectively, studying architecture?
It's a lot of hours, that's true. Because a design, the first thing you don't always get the things right at the first time. So it does take time. It's kind of like, how do I, so in architecture, there's never really a final design. So you would always be improving your drawings and the concepts. But you do have your tutors at the end of the day to guide you through architecture school. And it really helps if you get a really good tutor as well that would direct you in the path that you want to be done. Again, it depends. It's architecture is a creative, for me anyway, it's a creative course, and it really depends on how you want to learn. So but it does take a lot of time, because it does take time to learn the softwares as well, and you just need to dedicate yourself.
Yeah. So that's really interesting. So it's one of those things where it will take time. It's not necessarily hard if you are passionate about it, but if it's something that you haven't got a passion about, then it would be particularly difficult, maybe. So you need to have that real interest. And it's funny because like sometimes when you doing something that you love, the time just flies anyway, right? And so it doesn't even feel hard because you're just engrossed in it and you're loving doing it. Precious, sorry, I realized we're going almost over time now. Do you want to talk about the second drawing, the isometric drawing?
Yes, so again, start from the bottom and work your way up. Just draw 2 lines against each other, like as seen on the screen. Also, don't be afraid to create more lines than necessary. So when you're drawing, you'd imagine it to be a box first, and then work your way up with it, and just draw over the lines that you would see after. If that makes sense.
Great. So the thing about an isometric drawing is, from what I understand, is that those If you've got a protractor, it'd be quite useful because they're usually done on a 30-degree angle. And this is so you're seeing 3 different planes, aren't you, of the object. You're seeing the top of it and you're seeing the 2 sides of it all collectively. But you were saying to me before, when drawing an isometric drawing, it's often useful to put in all of those lines that you can't see as well to help you get the structure, to help you capture the form. So you were saying about putting in those, say like the vertical line at the back there, and the 2 lines that would run parallel to the lines that we can see in the foreground. So it gives them a sense of, gives the viewer a sense of the perspective and how the structure would work together. I quite like how you've drawn the darker lines over the top in that one, Precious. So it gives us a sense of what the eye is meant to be looking at from this angle, but we can also see those structural lines below it as well, those ones that kind of look like they're ghostly or almost invisible. But that's helped you to get the form correct. Is that right?
Yes.
Excellent.
So this is a practice that you'd actually do at architecture school. So you first draw everything out. So when you're sketching, and then you use your uni pins. I don't know if I've got one. Yeah. This is going to be one of your best friends.
What is it?
Oh, it's a uni pin, fine line.
Yeah. So you draw with these like all the time, right?
Yes. So after you draw everything on pencil, using pencil, you would then go over the lines with the pens. So yeah.
Got you. So that's when the structure's kind of decided. So we've got a few questions. What's your favorite style of architecture?
I would go for modern architecture or postmodern architecture, any of those 2. But again, that sometimes it differs. I do have a special place for Gothic architecture in my heart. So I guess it's those 3 things that I like. There's a new upcoming architecture which is called parametrics, and that's more of a computational design, but you do get really, really great forms with those kind of designs.
Yeah.
So do have a look into it.
So can you say that again, and I can pop that in the chat so people can have a look at? Is it parametrics?
Yes, parametric architecture or computational design.
Brilliant. Great. I'm just going to review the other questions that we've had coming in and pop that into the chat as well. So yes, so some people have been asking about using SketchUp. At the moment, guys, we're just drawing with pens and paper, but we're going to go into using SketchUp shortly. So Precious is going to be running a brief tutorial in that, and then doing like a step-by-step kind of demonstration of how to use it. So we're not using SketchUp right now, but we will be using that as part of the next task. If you've been using it already, then I'm super impressed. So at the moment, just to remind you, we are drawing the isometric kind of drawings of your object at the moment. So for those of you that have a squared object, this is going to be a lot easier than those of you that have got a rounded object. An isometric drawing is effectively the 3rd picture that we've got at the bottom of Precious's screen, which is the 3 kind of blocks stacked on top of one another. That's what an isometric drawing is. It's kind of a drawing where we can see 3 facades of the object. So we can see the top and the 2 sides. The first one we were doing was just of the flat planes. So in Precious's example in the middle, we've got the side and we've got the front. Do you have any more tips for drawing isometric drawings, isometric structures, Precious?
I would put a flat ruler or a flat edge at the bottom of my my drawing, so then and use something like this, like a T-square.
Yeah.
So then
yeah.
you just need to slide it across when you're drawing that angle or drawing the straight lines, and it helps you.
That's a nice tip.
Draw it quickly.
So we've had some interesting questions. How important is architecture theory?
It is important because you'd have, so what it does is that it puts in a background for your design. So when you're doing your dissertation or thesis for both your bachelor and your master's, you need that. It sort of builds up what your design is. So it gives you how do you say this? It gives you that sort of like, so let's say in law, when you're defending somebody, you need to have all those information to say that, oh, they're not guilty or they are guilty. So it's kind of like that within architecture. So you have to defend your design, why it's like this, and you use the architectural theory to defend, to say that, or to justify your design. You know?
Yeah, that makes sense. So we've got a couple more questions, and I guess we're not running out of time, but we're just going to be aware of time. So maybe if we just answer these next couple of questions and then move on. The thing about what we're doing at the moment, though, just to let you know, is it's just giving you a taster of different types of drawing that will be used within architecture. This isn't about making anything perfect. This isn't about getting it right first time. This is just giving you a bit of an insight into the way that an architect approaches drawing, rather than just kind of doing a standard kind of still life based drawing. Now, the questions I have for you, Precious, while we're finishing off these isometric drawings is, which other fields kind of complement architecture? So we've got someone that loves film. So how can can concepts from architecture help with filmmaking? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah. So if you're doing something like a Marvel's movie, let's say the Black Panther. So that's all fake, isn't it? The buildings are all fake. The cities are all fake. But with architecture, with a background in architecture, you would have a sense of how a building or a city would feel like. So that would help you into creating those spaces, just to make sure that they're more realistic.
Yeah, that's great. That's one of the things that's been quite interesting with our visual effects course. We have animation and visual effects, and a large part of what they will do is create false environments and backdrops, and that ties in a lot with film. And other courses that cross over with that are things like animation, as well as games art and design. They cross over quite a lot in creating those digital visualizations of, in this case, buildings and environments. So we've got a final question for you, whilst we're kind of refining these isometric drawings, which is someone's debating between doing architecture and interior design, but they're a bit concerned that architecture won't be creative enough. But what do you think of that, from your understanding, Precious, of the difference between architecture and interior design?
I think for me anyway, architecture is more broad than interior design, because interior design, you're restricted to 4 walls. When I was working in the practice and they had the interior team, they would just, the design was great, but the space that they work in is restricted. So I think if you want to be more creative, you'd go for architecture rather than interior design, but I'm biased. So.
I thought you might say something along that line. I think that's a really interesting thing, really interesting question to ask. And I think the best thing to do in that situation, if I were you, is go to an open day and have a look at both the interior design and architecture courses at any given university and compare the two. Interior design tends to be more about spatial reconfiguration. It tends to be about projects that have a shorter term lifespan. It tends to be about the finishing and it could be about soft finishings and lighting and furniture. Whilst architecture could be bits of that, but it's, you know, it could be things like town planning. It could be things like looking at architectural historian based work. So it's maybe arguably a bit more diverse, I'd probably say, like Precious was suggesting. Precious, is there a name for the 2D drawing that we've been doing? A more technical name than 2D drawing?
So the 2D drawings would be called elevations. So they are the faces of your building.
Great, thank you. Okay, and I've got some more questions for you, but do you want to move on to the next part of the workshop, or would you like to introduce Padlet at this stage a bit earlier? What do you think?
We could introduce Padlet now, I guess, so they can start uploading.
Yeah, great. So, guys, if you would like to, it would be great to invite you to share your drawings. It'd be really interesting to see what you've been up to. Precious, would you mind sharing the Padlet board on your screen? Would that be okay?
Yes.
Great. So guys, this is our Padlet board. This is basically like a pin board where we're just going to be sharing our work. In order to use this, all you need to do is scan the QR code that's on the screen right now. That will open up this browser on your smartphone device. And then you'd just be able to take a photograph of your work and then upload it to this page. And it looks like some of you are doing that already. So it's going to be really interesting to see what you've been putting up there. Sam, I'm just going to check. Are you in the background approving these? Is that cool?
Yeah, I can't see that any have come through. I think a few are now being uploaded, but we'll get them added in a sec.
Great, thank you, mate. So Precious, would you be able to refresh your screen as well? Oh, these are great, guys. Amazing.
Oh, wow. I like this one, the middle one.
There's one where they've made a hairdryer look like something out of Star Wars. It's really, really cool.
Oh yeah, that one's cool.
That's a really brave one to take on as well, especially for the isometric drawing. Amazing.
I'm excited how they're going to turn that into a model.
Into a SketchUp design.
Yeah.
Great. Any thoughts on these in particular? Oh, someone's got straight in. Brilliant. With SketchUp. Nice one.
I think they're all really brave and very imaginative as well. Just going for it, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. It's great to see how you've started to include thresholds within your work, those windows and doors. And we haven't mentioned it, but you've instinctively been, on the whole, collectively thinking about the body as well, and how the body would be interacting with your design. So thinking about scale, which I think is absolutely key when it comes to creating successful design work in this field. That's fascinating. Excellent. Precious, sorry, do you want to move on to the next part of the workshop? Please do be uploading your works though, guys. We'd love to see what you've been creating. We'll come back to the Padlet board a little bit later, and you'll be able to see what's been created in the meantime as well by just clicking on the browser and just refreshing that for yourselves and seeing what people have been up to. It's genuinely amazing what you've been producing. Thank you so much. Precious, do you want to?
So if we move on to the digital modeling, we would be turning our drawings into SketchUp. You can't see my screen. There, so from the drawings that we did earlier, you could then turn it into a 3D digital model. So I'm just gonna take us to SketchUp. So you guys should have this.
So can you talk us through what you did in order to get here, Precious? Just for those people that will be loading it up now.
I clicked on the link from the summer school page.
Yeah.
And then you'd click on the personal project and start modeling.
Excellent.
I think, no. I mean, do you want me to share the link to them?
We've got that in the chat already, so that's fine.
So just start modeling, everyone. So I'm just going to quickly explain the main tools, 5 main tools. So there's the line pen, which lets you draw straight lines. And there's also the squiggly one, which lets you draw freehand lines. And then there's the eraser, which rubs out all the lines. There's also the rectangle. So if your building's more like mine, which is rectangular, it's probably easier to do it this way and get your rectangle straight away. And one of the main tools would be the push button. So again, this is going to extrude your faces. So give them volumes. How many is that already? So those are just the main tools on SketchUp. So for I didn't actually finish my isometric, but I can show you briefly what the form is like for my drawing.
Unfortunately, it's blurred out. I'm really sorry. We'll have to see it on Padlet a bit later.
Right,
Could you show us the object that you were drawing?
Yes, so I was drawing this object.
Yes. So a similar stack of books and parcels.
Yeah. So what I like to do is first check the units. This is just my personal preference. So just have a look at everything that's on your side. One of the great things about SketchUp is that it comes with a 3D warehouse, so some things are already modeled up for you and you can use it. You can just take anything from there. So as you can see, this is in inches, and we worked in the metric system for the UK, so we'll be using millimeters or centimeters. I usually go for millimeters.
Great, yeah, and that was one of the questions that we've had is about how do I change the size in a SketchUp. So I'm guessing the question is how do I change the length units? So that's really useful to know on the right hand side there.
Yeah.
Great, can you just talk us through how you did that one more time?
It's on model info, so if you look at the eye,
yeah,
eye here with the circle, that's where it is.
Yep, perfect.
So let's use the line tool. I would usually do something like 5,000, which is 5 meters. So already you can tell that my I was too zoomed in. And then probably 3,000 was 3 meters by 5.
So now you're drawing a line, but you're kind of typing in the measurements, is that right?
Yes, yes.
So you're using the pencil tool and just typing in the measurement as you mark out the line. Is that it?
Yeah. Yes. So say I want 2 meters. I'll just press on the left button, and then because you could see it here on the bottom what your
Yeah.
length is. But if you want it to be exactly 3 meters, then you just type in 3,000 and you get and press enter.
Great. So we've had a question. Would you suggest we draw a flat plane on the ground first? I guess for this step in the process, it's very much about, you can either copy Precious and follow Precious's kind of the way that Precious does her demonstration, or you can kind of just play and just have a watch of what Precious does with the tools and materials, and then just do your own thing. It's often useful to kind of build out from the ground and then go upwards. But would you agree with that, Precious?
Yes, I agree, absolutely. So with what I'm doing is I'm just building the bottom of my building first. And then once I've got the length, I would use, because my building, my design is rectangular, I would just go for the rectangle and draw from that. So I've already got the measurements. So does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so.
And usually one floor would be 2.5 meters or 3 meters. It depends on what you're putting inside the building. So I would opt for 5 meters, which means 2 floors for me. You can tell that it's already really tall.
So you're scrolling around your object there. Can you just show us how to do that?
So on your mouse, so there's two options. You could use this, the orbit tool, or if you've got a mouse, just click on the scroll button.
Yeah.
You're doing that, and it would let you orbit around. But these tools here would let you zoom in or move your model as well. So this one just moves it for your view.
So just while you're cracking on with that, I'm just going to repeat. So for everyone that's taking part, you're very welcome to copy what Precious is up to, or to interpret it in your own way. Or it might be that you want to take that object that you've drawn and start to recreate that in SketchUp. Either way, it's absolutely up to you. It's just about having fun with it as a resource and just kind of understanding some of its functionality, however best suits the way you like to work.
So for me, I feel like this is too tall. So what I'd want to do is increase the width and the length. So I'll probably add another 5 meters there and another 5 here as well. And then I'd like to move on to the second part of the building. So I would be using the offset button, which is F on your keyboard, but it's also here on this side. The offset. So for me, I'd offset it for about 3 meters. Let's see how that looks. Too small. Again, this is the good thing with SketchUp is that you find out how it feels, how your building would feel like in the real world. Let's try 2000, so 2 meters. Once you start putting in those measurements, then you know that if a person is about 500 millimeters and your space, you're offsetting it for about 2 meters, and you can fit roughly 3 people there walking, or 2 people crossing each other. So just, I think this one should be 1 floor. So that's 2 points. And then again, I just repeated what I did with the bottom model. But this one, I'd like to offset it out outside about 1 meter. And that's 1 floor.
Cool. So there's been a quick question. How would you create a circular building? What tool would you use for that?
So on your, hi, sorry.
No, go for it, sorry.
Circular building, you could use, on your keyboard, you could just type C and it gives you a circle, but it's also on this left side. And it depends what type of circular building you're looking for. If you're looking for a cylinder, then just do just use the circle, and then you would push it up.
Yeah.
So, is that what you're looking for?
I believe so, but please correct me if we're wrong with that, Gabriella. Other than that, we've had some interesting questions about how you might achieve certain effects, but we might have to come back to those. So for now, Precious, if you just kind of continue with your model, and then we'll come back to some of those more interesting ones. Guys, if you do have any suggestions for one another in the chat, though, thank you for answering one another's questions. That's great. But if you are able to help out with some of those, then that'd be brilliant as well, because I don't know how many we're going to be able to get round to, but we'll try to get to as many as we can. Great. So
I'm happy with my form.
Yeah.
And then the next thing you could do is apply thresholds. So think about the doors and the windows and how you'd want your building to look. So for the door, 2.5 out. The doors are usually 2.1 meters high. And the width would be 900 to 1000. So for this, the purpose of this, we'll use 1000. The first thing you would do if you're drawing a door is to have its frame around it. So that's 100 millimeters. Just something that would hold the door. So this would act like something that would hold the pressure from the building, because you are making a hole here.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then just for design purposes, I'd like to draw another frame within. And usually it's the doors, the width, the opening of the door is usually around 200. So it depends on the thickness of your wall. Walls are usually 300 to 200 millimeters. But just have fun with it. I usually like to make it look 3D. So that's why I do this.
Cool. So we've got a quick question about how do you reduce your screen size? Do you have any recommendations on that?
The screen size.
Yeah. Maybe we should interpret that as how do you zoom in and zoom out?
Okay, so here where the orbit button is, there's a zoom button. So this is, if you just drag your, if you press the left button and drag towards your model or out, it lets you zoom in. But you could also zoom in this way. So you draw a rectangle and it lets you zoom into that part. Yeah. So I'm now moving on to the windows. Let's try and have like a really huge window. Again, draw a frame for the window so that you could give it some depth later on.
As you're doing this, Precious, what do you think makes good architecture?
I think for me, it's the atmosphere that it gives to its users.
Yeah.
So how the building feels or how it makes the user or the visitor feel. So that would work. I mean, that would depend on the kind of shadows that it casts. So the light that goes inside the building, the materials that you use, how the space is designed as well. Something that's convenient for the user. I think that's one thing as well to consider.
So I'm just looking at the clock, and in terms of time, we might not be able to do too much more in terms of thresholds. You might want to kind of just start to look at texturing and things shortly.
All right, so if I want to add materials to this, I'd go into the materials section. And if you look on my screen, it's this button. It's on this button, the one with the sort of like a magnifying glass.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because it's contemporary, I would go for something like concrete. I hope it works. Yeah. Maybe this one feels better. And then for the window, I would go for metal. So that just gives your model more feel to it, more realistic feel, and it allows you to see how your design is going to look like in the real world. So just have fun and play around with the materials that you have. See how they look.
That's really cool. I really love when you just put the glass in, it just opens up. Well, it gives you a sense of what that space inside the volume of it. And it's a really simple thing to do.
Yeah, and there's a lot of options of how you can like how your glass would look as well.
Yeah, it really transforms it and gives it character.
Yeah.
So whilst you're doing this, Precious, I'm just going to answer a few questions. So we've had a question around what's the deadline for submitting the work. We're going to be basically responding to, well, receiving, I should say, submissions right up into September. So the last week of the series, the summer school series, is actually the week of the 30th of September. So as long as we have your submissions by the 6th of September, that will effectively be the deadline. But that's a good question. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
So just to remind you as well, some of you that have sent your work over Padlet, thank you for that. I think that's excellent. Those works will need to be submitted to us over email again. And at the end of the presentation, we're going to be mentioning that email address. I think it's already been mentioned in the chat. It's student.recruitment@nua.ac.uk. And when you submit your work, what we'll do is we're going to be logging that. We're going to be keeping a track so to see that you've logged it, sent us at least 3 pieces of work from different workshops, or pieces of work from 3 different workshops, and then we'll be looking at sending you a certificate at the end of the series. So that's quite interesting. You just copied and pasted your whole doorway.
Yeah. It's just, it makes it easier to just do that. Yeah. So
how did you do that?
Is, so I'm just gonna leave, let's say, 1 meter out there. So there's a sort of like a guide where I can put it, and then just highlight everything. So select the whole door, and then if you could do move, so you get this tool out, and then when you click on it, make sure you press Control on the keyboard. So then when you apply it, when you find that guide, it just comes back.
That's really cool.
If that makes sense. Yeah.
This looks like something you'd see on a site of an old airfield. Like, it looks like some sort of radar tower.
Yeah. I was going for like a tower, but then it's only 4 floors. So I thought maybe not.
It's a mini block of flats.
Yeah.
So yeah, so for those of you that have been in on the chat as well, thank you for answering those questions, Sam. You can submit to us either your SketchUp drawing or your drawings that you were doing, those isometric drawings and the 2D drawing as well. That would be absolutely fine to show us both or either of those. That would be fantastic.
So I think let's move on. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I was just about to say we've got around 15 minutes left, so we might want to show us the next trick.
Yes, so the shadows. Sorry. I can't seem to find the shadows. Oh, there we go. So it's just under seams.
Great. Did you click on the sunglasses symbol there, or on the clipboard above it?
You could click on the sunglasses.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you just click on the shadows and turn it on, and it would give you a sense of feel of how your building is going to look. So you just pick whatever. When you're in a practice, you actually have to find the orientation, but for this purpose, I don't think that's quite important yet.
Yeah.
But usually you'd want your building to be facing south if you're from the northern hemisphere of the world. But if you're from the southern hemisphere, you'd want your building to be facing north.
Yeah, yeah.
So you could pick the time or the date as well. And you just see how the shadows are casted.
That's really cool.
So if you've got a really large window, you can see how it illuminates the inside. And then you could also save the scenes that you want. This is more for later, once you've done your modeling. So once you've finished all the texture and the shadows and the thresholds on your model, you could pick how you would want to look at it. So say you want to see it this way, you could save that scene, and then once you start moving around again, you could just go back to that scene.
Cool. Can you show us how you did that again?
So on this, on the scenes, the
Yeah.
little movie thing.
Yeah.
So you just pick whatever view you want. So I'll do another one. So with the person here. So this is the camera position. So I could look into it that way. Or this way. So if I want to save the scene, I just click on the plus button here. And then already it shows you two scenes. So if I want to go back to the other scene, I just double click that one. And if I want to go back to the new one, it's just double clicking that.
That's so
and the thing
cool.
with SketchUp is that you could animate it as well at the after.
Yeah.
So these scenes would help you animate it.
And so there's been a question about, is it easy to import things in? Like we saw that at the beginning when you were starting to use things, when you were kind of going through the menuing system, there was that option to import kind of tables and chairs and stuff. Is that easy to do?
Yes, so that's it depends what you could import what you've done from a different software. So say you draw something from AutoCAD and you bring that to SketchUp and then start building from there. Or you could do the 3D warehouse. So if you click on this button here, it lets you search what you want from it. And then you just bring it in. Just make sure when you download it's SketchUp, the software that it's for. Maybe we can try it. I think you need to log in.
Cool.
There we
So
go.
that's all to scale as well. That's awesome. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Right. Just to let you know, there's 10 minutes left, so you might want to start wrapping things up. Sorry to put the pressure on slightly.
That's okay. Right. So if we just go back to the presentation.
Oh, did you want to show us how to save as well? Because it's a slightly different process. Sorry. So if you would like to show us what you've been up to on Padlet, it's important that you follow this next step in terms of how to save your designs.
So what you do is click on the three lines on the top left corner and do download. So if you download it as PNG, which lets you download it as a photo, so export as PNG. And it should come up, show up.
Great. Thank you for that, Precious.
Should be saved.
Cool. So guys, if you'd like to to save your work as PNGs and then apply those to Padlet. That would be really interesting to see.
Yeah, so that's just where you find it. Download PNG.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. Yes. So normally we'd have a crit, what we call the crit, at the end of the year, where other people start to look at your work and you present your work. But I think for today, we're just going to upload on, or for this workshop, we're just uploading on the Padlet to see each other's work. But normally you would have your tutors telling you what works well, what doesn't work, how to improve things and all that. Yeah, but always remember that there's no such thing as mistakes. And my screen's not sharing, sorry. There we go.
That's all right. Yeah, we can see the presentation again now.
Yeah, so always remember that there's no such thing as mistakes, only learning curves, and there's no final design in architecture. And just have fun with it, really. As you can see in the photos there.
I think group crits are an amazing way of learning. Like when I was studying at Norwich University of the Arts as well, it's one of the key ways that you develop an understanding of other people's perspectives is by putting your work out there and asking people to give their feedback on it. Being able to learn collectively from so many different minds is a really, really, really useful way of learning. It can sometimes feel bruising if it's not done in a sensitive way. If it's not about constructive feedback, then it can be a bit bruising to do. But if it's done well, if it's done respectfully, actually, it's one of the best ways we can learn. And doing things like the Padlet board are an example of, getting your work out there, having other people looking at it. I think when we're often at high school, college, it's often easy to feel quite precious about your work because it's an extension of yourself in some way. You're, I guess, putting yourself out there. And you only really often want your teacher and yourself to be the people that are looking at it. But actually, when you get to university, it's really about showing it to other people to understand their perspectives on your practice. And that's a great way of getting a broader awareness of how to be a more effective maker. Would you be able to have a little browse of the Padlet board?
Yeah.
We've had some really interesting designs that have come in.
Oh, I like this one, the underground station.
Yeah, I mean, I think people are still tinkering on their models, but these are the first three that have been sent through. They're really impressive to see in a short space of time what you've achieved. It's quite amazing.
I could see that this is from an earlier upload, I think. This one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been really well replicated.
Yeah.
Yeah, we haven't had any others sent through just yet, but if you are able to, guys, if you would like to share your work, remember, rather than going to save, you're going to, is it export that you go to on
Download, you go to download.
Download, that was it, and get a PNG and then send that over to us over the Padlet board. But that's really interesting to see what you've made so far. Precious, we might have a little look at this a little bit later before we close, but were there any other kind of remarks you wanted to make, or any other slides to go through on the presentation?
Yes, so I just want to share what an architecture course could lead to. So this was the practice I worked at. So the first thing that if you want to go into architecture, the first thing you'd have in mind is to be an architect at the end of the day, or some don't take the part 3 exam, just enjoy being an architectural assistant or designer. it's kind of the same thing. It's just that you probably won't have that option to own a practice, but it's, you do have that sense of responsibility as well as an architect. And then there's things where like you could go into the government and become a design consultant. So you'd be designing which projects will get built. So, and that's usually in the government section. And you could be a physical or a digital model maker. So you could get hired by practices to create the models for them, because sometimes they won't have the time or they won't have the skills within their practice to make a model. So they would hire someone else. So that could be your career path. And a digital model maker would also mean that you could go into VFX and model for movies or animations or even games. Yeah, you could become an innovator. So there are architects out there that have used their skills of 3D printing to create things like 3D printed icing on cakes or sugars. So this is actually sugar, but that's 3D printed. Or you could become an illustrator. So there's this architect called Carlos Stanga, and he just illustrates for children's books. So the skills are very much transferable from town planning into more creative careers.
That's really cool. So when you go into one field of architecture, right? So you study on part one, doing a BA, so a Bachelor of the Arts. And then maybe you progress into, I don't know, working in a practice. Can you then go in a different direction a few years later, but within an architectural field, or do you have to kind of specialize and just focus on one sort of direction?
No, you could do whatever you want, to be honest. Again, architecture is very versatile. It's a design-based industry, so you could go into different things if you want.
Cool.
You could go into interior architecture as well. So interior designing, if you enjoy that, it really depends on what you enjoy the most, because there's a huge set of skills that you could practice within architecture.
Cool. Thank you.
Yes, and I think that's it from me today. So good luck, and thank you for having me, everyone. I hope it was really helpful, and I hope that what I shared with you guys today would help you into deciding what your future careers would be. And I hope you pick architecture.
Precious, thanks so much for your time. Thank you so much for your wisdom, your insight, your tips. It's all been really useful. I hope, guys, that you've had a really fun little play as part of this session. I hope that the conversations that we've had have been quite useful for you as well, to get an understanding of architectural practice and what it's about. I'm just going to start to round things off now. So effectively, we're coming towards the end of the workshop, but we will be answering some of your questions that we haven't been able to answer during the session afterwards, just after I've done this little bit. So if you bear with me, I'm going to be saying some useful information about submitting your work. So before we finish up today, I just want to remind you that we have a wide range of workshops across the summer school series. So you'll be able to access these through taking part live like you are now, or you'll be able to access them through recordings of the session. These sessions will cover a huge range of creative practices. So to come, we've still got designing zines, we've got thinking like a UX designer, we've got things like exploring your identity and far more besides. So please have a little look at our link to our summer school series page, where you'll be able to find out a bit more in each of the blurbs that we've got written out there. If you haven't already, you can book your place on the website on the link that I think Sam is going to be popping into the chat shortly. Thank you, Sam. We'll also be offering you the opportunity to receive an official NUA certificate, which is a great way or a great thing to talk about in any UCAS personal statement application. So this is just to show that you're not just doing things that you're being asked of you in the classroom, but that you're being proactive, that you're going beyond expectation, and that's stuff that universities love to see. To get a hold of one of these, all you'll need to do is attend 6 of the 12 workshops that we have lined up, and then we'd like to see 3 outcomes as a result of the 6 that you've attended. So please be aware that any work that you submit to us over email might be used for future promotional information for an upcoming series. You can send your 3 outcomes to us by email at student.recruitment@nua.ac.uk. Please title your work in line with the workshop titles, clearly, so it just makes it a bit easier for us to navigate what piece of work you submitted in response to each workshop. So for this workshop, for example, that's accessing architecture. Your Padlet submission won't form part of your submission tally. The outcomes could be something that you've made as part of this workshop, doing it live alongside us, or it might be something that you do retrospectively as well. So it could be something you've done after the workshop. Beg your pardon. Sorry, I just need to clear my throat. Right, I'm back in the game. So we really want to see what you've been making throughout the summer school series. So please send your photos to us also over our Instagram account. So that's @NUA Outreach and also @takeyourplace_HE. We'll be sharing some of our favorite pieces throughout the series. So please do get involved. Right. I've got a real frog in my throat. I'm so sorry. So each week, we'll also be giving away one of our fancy Chili's bottles. So to have your chance of winning one of these, please fill out the feedback form that will be sent over tomorrow. We'll be sending one out each week, so there's lots of chances to win. So I need a glass of water. Effectively, that's it for today's session. But do stick around for a few minutes if you'd like to have any of your questions answered. Other than that, Precious, thank you so much for running the workshop today. And thank you everyone for joining us. We hope to see you again. Thank you very much. Right.
You want me to stick around and answer some questions?
Yeah, if you can stick around for a moment, we've just got a few questions that we'll look to get answered, and then we'll draw things to a complete close. So, Sam, can I ask you to jump in for a moment and just bring up some questions? Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll just I'm just getting back to a few of you. A few of you have sort of asked whether or where you can send your outcomes. So I've just dropped the student recruitment link in there for you. You can send over either your 2D outcomes, so those sketches that you were doing, but you can also send in your 3D work or pieces of both. We only do need one piece of work from each workshop to be considered, or for you to be considered for that certificate, but you're more than welcome to share more with us. I'm just about to share the summer school page website with everyone as well, because the next workshop that we have coming up is running tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. British summer time. So do make sure you check the time in your local area. And that workshop is our commercial storytelling with photography workshop, which we will actually be joined by one of our photography graduates, the lifestyle photographer, Kat Gundry-Beck, who's now based in Iceland. So I will post the link to the summer school again. There's a good question here as well. I just realized I'm not actually on camera as well, so I'll quickly pop that on. There we go. So what A-levels that you sort of pick, would that impact what you can do for architecture? So different universities may have different sort of entry requirements. So if you are looking at going to study a bachelor's course or a BSc course, it is worth checking with every institution to make sure that you know what their entry requirements are. For our course in particular, we do love to see a creative subject, whether it's an arts, media, design-based course, but it isn't always a necessity. It's not something that's always essential. What we would really want to see alongside that would be a portfolio of your work that shows us the skills and abilities that you already have. So, as I say, ideally, studying an arts course at A-level is perfect, but it's not a necessity. What it could be really useful for is helping you to decide what your next steps could be, and it could provide some really good foundational skills and some really good skills and abilities that you can then take forward to your university course, but it isn't something that we definitely expect to see from you. Do we also need to send the picture we are working from? You don't need to send the image that you were working from or any images of the objects. It could be quite interesting to see if you've got the sort of final piece and the inspiration, but it isn't an essential part to be considered for that certificate. I think the last question as well is probably one more for you, Precious. So is it possible to pursue architecture later on in life, or do you need to have gone to university? Actually, that's quite a good question generally. It's something that, I mean, a lot of the skills that you're learning on the architecture course, as well as all of, in particular, our creative courses, all of the skills you're learning can be transferable. So, if future opportunities in your career, you can move into slightly different areas. Obviously, with certain courses, there are really key skills that you do learn, architecture being one of those. But, people come into different sort of careers at different stages in their life. So even if you decide that architecture isn't the right route for you until slightly later on, and you've spent some time doing something slightly different, there's always a good time to, start learning those skills and to sort of start exploring a new career kind of pathway for yourself. I don't know if there's any questions you had really, Tom. I don't know if there were any that you've seen that you needed to get back to, sorry.
I was just wondering what Precious has experienced in terms of, do you see many other people that are your peers that are from other age groups as well, like people coming into architecture later on in life?
Yes, so this was when I was working in practice. I was working with a lady who was a nurse before, and then she went into architecture, and I think she was around 40 to 50 years old. So you don't have to do it like straight away. Maybe you could do something else and then do architecture after. I mean, it's definitely a course that's for everyone, if that makes sense. Yeah. And architecture is about the journey at the end of the day. So I did go to uni with one of I think he was in graphics before, and then he transferred into architecture. So it really depends on how you feel. Yeah.
Yeah, it's something you touched on earlier actually as well, and that someone had asked, is about that transition of architectural skills into other disciplines as well. So I'm sure you'd find sort of people that are working in maybe such as like the film industry or VFX industry that have also come from an architectural kind of background. So you can certainly sort of collaborate and move in those different circles.
Yeah.
Great. Well, I think that's it for the questions. I can't see any more at the moment. If I have missed your question, then I do apologize for that. But I do hope that you've enjoyed it. I do hope that you've got something out of it. And I do hope that it's something that you'll be able to take some of these skills and apply them to other things or share them with other people as well. And other than that, we hope that you would be able to join us again. Thank you.
Yes,
Thanks,
thank you
Precious.
for having me. Bye.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks, everyone. See you later.
Thanks everyone. See you later.
Bye.